Welcome to Acreage Adventures, where I document all the interesting things I build on my acreage. In today's video, I'm going to be building this awesome treehouse for my kids. I started this channel because I'm always doing something around the house, and when I talk to friends and family, I find they're genuinely interested in things that I'm up to. For example, in the last couple of years, I built this hoop house where I grow a giant pumpkin. I refinished this polycarbonate greenhouse and built a new garden around it. On the smaller side, I built this gate for our dog Ruby, and every winter I build an ice rink in the backyard for my kids. So if you're interested in this kind of content and these kinds of projects, I really encourage you to like and subscribe to the channel. Now, without further ado, let's get building a treehouse. Now, while you watch us mark out where we're going to put the post holes, I want to address the elephant in the room. This isn't exactly a treehouse. It's probably better described as a permanent playset that we built in the tree line. However, that doesn't exactly roll off the tongue and probably doesn't work very well for search engine optimization or YouTube's algorithms. So if you really feel the need to make a comment that it's not a, quote, real treehouse, be my guest, but I know what I did, and unlike Justin Bieber, I won't be saying sorry. As you watch us finish augering holes, please note that this last hole was totally unnecessary. I originally planned to use it to support the swing sets, but that was just a bad idea, so I ended up filling this hole back in later. As we switch back to the zipline platform, you'll notice a bunch of work is already done. Unfortunately, I significantly overestimated how long a GoPro's battery would last on time-lapse mode, and missed a bunch of footage where I installed and concreted in these posts. Is it too late now to say sorry? While you watch me frame out the floor on the zipline platform, this might be a good time to address the second elephant in the room. My plan for this channel is not to make how-to videos. If you're handy, you can probably figure out what we're doing and replicate it, but that's not the main purpose of the channel. To me, I'm hoping these videos will be more like those woodworking ones you come across on Facebook. While I enjoy building things, sometimes it's nice to just sit on my couch and watch someone else pour an epoxy table. I'm hoping my channel will feel something like that. Alright, so you didn't get to see the last time we cemented in the post holes, so hopefully this makes up for it. Obviously it goes really fast on a sped up time lapse, but this was actually a pretty time consuming endeavor. It's really important to get these posts plumb, so we spent a lot of time wiggling them around and then eventually bracing them. Once that was done, we made it permanent by adding a few bags of concrete. After letting the concrete set for a day, it was time to start framing out the floors. For this part, you can see that I had a lot of helpers. In fact, throughout this video you will see my helpers drifting in and out constantly. Sometimes when we're doing stuff like this with kids, it'll feel like it might be quicker without them. However, I almost never exclude them when I'm doing a project. In some cases, that second pair of hands can be really useful, and ultimately if you keep including them, you might be surprised how handy they get. For this project, my kids were actually a huge help. In this case, you can see that my sons screwed down almost all of the deck boards. Before making these videos, I hadn't realized just how much I get interrupted while doing these projects. For example, in this clip you can see that I'm down 2 helpers, and that's probably because it's a Saturday morning and my sons have swimming lessons. A little later, my daughter will have swimming and my son will have tennis, so I'll have to take a break to take him to his lesson. That said, this isn't an unusual occurrence. As I was gathering the clips for this video, I couldn't help but notice that most of the clips weren't that long. On average, they probably only captured an hour and a half worth of work. Don't get me wrong, I'm not complaining. Thankfully, we live very full lives, and just like the Backstreet Boys, I want it that way. Don't get too excited, the swing set isn't going up quite yet. With a few design changes along the way, I was just trying to figure out how many 4x4 posts I had left, and which ones I would need for the swing set legs. With all 3 deck platforms now complete, it's time to install the railings. For extra stability, my plan was to cut holes in the floor and have each post sit down amongst the 2x6 joists. Unfortunately, some of the posts landed right in the middle of the joists, so in those cases I had to use metal post bases. Oh, and it was pretty windy that day, so I thought it would be nice to get you a low-angle, sideways shot of this part. Although we're not quite done with the railings, there were 2 little boys who were really excited about getting a trapdoor, so we started work on that. This was easier than I thought as we simply put the door right between 2 joists and to keep the boards together, screwed them all to a piece of plywood. As soon as we had something even a little bit workable, you can see the boys trying it out over and over again. I guess Miley Cyrus was right all along. It is all about the climb. Here comes another low-angle shot. When it happened, I assumed it was the wind again, but now we have incontrovertible evidence that it was actually a beaver. After careful consideration, there was a mid-project design change. Originally, I had planned to have the suspension bridge come off the two platforms at an angle. However, eventually we decided that might be too difficult and instead built an extension to the zipline platform so that we could make the bridge square. Ultimately, this cost a little bit more in materials, but I think it has a very cool look. Okay, now you can get excited about swings. While I wait for the whole family to be ready to attach the big beam, I managed to get the saucer swing going for my daughter. Big hit. To get the beam level, I trim a bit off the legs and also dig them down into the ground. I know the GoPro doesn't make it look level at the end, but I swear it is. At this point, there's not much left to do but start building the main treehouse. This is another place where it was really great to have helpers. These aren't huge walls, but all that framing is still heavy, and it's nice to have a second person to help lift and then also hold the walls in place while I screwed them down. At this point, I'd like to take a minute to appreciate the grass. Earlier in this video, you probably noticed how patchy and yellow it was, and here you can see I've put down some compost and overseeded. It's already looking better, but by the end of this video, it's quite a transformation. As we finish framing, I want to talk about the plan for sheeting the treehouse. It's going to seem a little odd as we're going to sheet the back wall, then add the roof joists, and then later sheet the side walls. I decided to do it this way because I really didn't want to have to notch out my sheeting on the back wall for every single roof joist. By changing the order, I was able to simply put up the sheeting and trim it to size with a Sawzall. This was my least favorite part of the project. What you'll probably notice here is that we make a lot of trips off camera. The reason is that I just can't seem to get the roof joists right. I had never done them before, so I assumed that I was just getting the angles wrong. What was actually happening is that one of the sidewalls was 1.5 inches longer than the other. It wasn't until I tried fitting one of my joists on both ends that I realized it must have been out of square. While I probably wasted a couple of hours on this mistake, I did eventually get it figured out and got those joists installed. With the joists, I also made another small design change. Originally, I was planning to have less overhang on the front as I was trying to make the roof work with the length of the roof panels. However, while I was going back and forth a bunch of times, I changed my mind and decided that buying a couple more roof panels was going to be worth it to make it look a whole lot better. Time-lapse really makes getting the roof and ceiling panels on look trivial, but I can assure you they were not. With the roof on, my father took off and I have a much shorter assistant. He also has strong opinions on the interior of the treehouse. For this, we used a lot of plywood, but also installed some pegboard. Apparently, this is going to be less of a treehouse and more of a Nerf battle station. For that to work, he wants to store all his Nerf guns on the wall like some kind of neon-colored John Wick. Paint makes such a difference, and it's crazy how easy it looks at this speed. Next up is the roof. Again, I've never tried this before, so it's entirely possible I did it wrong, but at least for now it looks good, and if I messed it up, it's just a treehouse. Last but not least, we're finally working on the suspension bridge. For this, I cut 2x4s down to 30 inches and then drilled holes in each end. It took a while to get metal spacers ordered, but once they got here, we ran wires between each board and separated them all with the spacers. This worked really, really well. With the suspension bridge in hand, all we had to do now was attach it to the two platforms. However, that's at least a two-man job, so it'll have to wait for when my father can come back. While we wait, we might as well install the roof panels. Not the best angle to start here, but I can assure you that it requires at least 2 fully grown men to get the wire tight enough on an 8-foot long suspension bridge. With the bridge itself up now, it's time to build the netting. To do this, we bought some black cargo netting and 1-inch nylon rope. We then laced the rope through the ends of the netting and then attached the rope to the posts on either end. Ultimately, the netting doesn't do anything to support the bridge floor, but it does serve as a backup in the event that something did go wrong. It also looks really awesome and is a big hit with the kids. Really starting to come together now as I put the railing up on the main treehouse. This is the first time I've ever built a railing with rope, and I have to say that I really like the look. I think it took me a little longer than it would have with different approaches, but just like the character in the Jason Sudeikis and Jennifer Aniston movie, We're the Millers, I have no regrets. With the treehouse itself almost done, it's time to build a zipline. To start, I'll remove a couple trees and then install the posts where the zipline attaches. For this, I went extra heavy duty with blocking and carriage bolts. This shot is doing double duty as I'm switching between framing the windows in the treehouse and using a gas-powered weed whacker to clear out a path for the zipline. In hindsight, the forest clearing was way cooler, and I should have focused on that. At least you'll get to see us rototill and rake it though. To be honest, I expected this part to be way harder than it was. However, I did dump a lot of extra soil from last year's landscaping projects here, so I think that helped a lot. Once I finish raking this all out, the next step will be to dig a hole for the zipline post. Unfortunately, I wasn't ready to do this when I rented the auger, so I'm stuck doing it by hand. It was hard work, but I have to say that it was also very satisfying to know that I could do it manually. A little bit of concrete and we're good to go. I almost built a guy wire to support this post, but honestly, it's so sturdy, there was no point. Back on the actual platform, we did install a guy wire to support the wood post as it did have some give. Oh, and go Oilers. I bet you thought I forgot to film the part where we built the monkey bars. Nope, it just took a while to order in the metal bars I wanted, so it ended up being one of the last parts of the project. Now onto the actual last part of the project, wood chips. I didn't put any landscaping fabric down as the plan is to have very thick wood chips. I love wood chips, and like Ryan Reynolds, I consider them to be a triple threat. Not only do they look great, but they will help to keep the weeds down, and if they're thick enough, they'll also cushion the blow if any of the kids happen to fall. And that's a wrap. Thank you for watching our video, and if you enjoy content like this, please like and subscribe to the channel. Also, if you have some time, leave a comment. This is my first video, and I'd love any feedback to help make future ones even better.
Wow, that's crazy!